If you use the internet on a daily basis, and chances are you do, you probably don't put much thought into cybersecurity. You know, your network connections, the pages you visit, the files you download. You should be thinking about these all the time. Welcome to And Security for All. Your host is Kim Hakim. We're here to help you understand, in general terms, how and why your cybersecurity should be kept in check. Now, here is Kim Hakim.
Hello, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. March 17th. It's hard to believe that we're already halfway through March, but welcome to another episode of And Security for All. I'm your host, Kim Hakim. Very excited about our show today. We're actually, I have the VP of IT at Visit Philadelphia, which is perfect timing because we are heading to Philadelphia. Tomorrow, we have a huge show there on Thursday, the FutureCon Cybersecurity Conference, and it is pretty much sold out, packed. We're excited. We love the security community in Philadelphia, so super excited to head back to Philadelphia. Today, we're going to be talking about the weakest link to the strongest defense through your awareness. And I have Keith McMenamin with me today. As I said, he's the VP of IT at Visit Philadelphia. How are you, Keith?
I'm great. How are you, Kim?
Good. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Thank you for the FutureCon team for selecting me. This is exciting. Glad to have you back in Philadelphia this week too. That's always a great show. So
it's always
keeping us on the radar.
Yeah, of course. That's one of our biggest shows of the year. So excited to be there. And like I said, pre-show, it's going to be a packed house. I'm trying to not say no to anybody else that's trying to get in. So anyway, good problems to have that we're all back out here again. So
absolutely.
How's everything going with Philly and, your position with Visit Philadelphia? Go ahead.
Yeah, Philadelphia is in a good place compared to where we were in 22 and 2023 when COVID shut the travel and hospitality industry down. We are now bunkers. We're at capacity crowds in hotels these days. I think 2026 is our biggest year this summer. We have the FIFA World Cup coming. We have the PGA Championship Tour coming, the MLB All-Star Game, the 250th birthday of the great US of A happening July 4th. So we have a big stretch ahead of us and, looking forward to it. So keeping us safe, keeping us secure, and keeping the traveler coming into town and having a great experience.
So that congratulations on all that. And I think, what you said, keeping your city secure, that's always on the top of probably when you go to bed at night and when you wake up, what you're always thinking about, what we all are. And let's talk a little bit about that. Why do you think that, I think we still have a big part. There's so much to talk about right now with AI and human awareness. What is your biggest challenge with your team and with what you're seeing in your sector of what you do?
Just without sounding cliche, it's the ever-evolving threats. And, with AI into the factor, making things that were once easy to detect now, looking legitimate, and, just the human element of it all. It only takes one hole or one avenue for a bad actor to get in, as to where people on our side, we have to, look at a million doors and windows and locks. So it's it's the whack-a-mole game, and reducing the number of points that an attacker could access places they shouldn't.
It's so interesting because it's so easy now. It's easier than ever to get fooled, especially with AI. Before we knew, certain little things, we could see letters, and now it's becoming tricky. And just for an example, I was in Utah registering my car because we have a ski condo there, and I was registering my car to Utah plates from Missouri plates, and then just, I think it was last week, I got a text that said, you got a traffic violation. Like, how would they even know I was in Utah? You got a traffic violation in Utah. It really, like, I was talking to one of my employees. I was like, did I get a ticket? And like, I didn't click on anything, but it was definitely, a phishing text. And I could see how easy someone would have just clicked on that and paid for their ticket.
It's funny you mentioned that. Just last night, my wife got a similar message from what we call the parking authority in Philadelphia, saying that she was on the verge of being towed. And she calls me downstairs and she says, hey, did you get a ticket that you didn't pay? Like, look at this, look at this message I received. And it looked just like, the parking authority letterhead, no obvious typos that you would have seen a year or two ago. But, fortunately, my trained eye saw the URL didn't match up. It's like now you have to be very intricate and very detailed to be able to spot some of these things. As you mentioned, you could not so long ago, you could just easily see the discrepancies, but now it's just getting so good. And I guess the parking and the transportation mode is a, common avenue to trick people. Nobody wants to, get a parking ticket or get towed or be, out in the cold.
Well, I mean, it's good that she asked, and it's good, because I imagine there's still going to be people that don't have security savvy minds that are just going to click on those links and pay and, pay whatever fee. Because it was the same thing. It was a little crazy because they were saying, we're going to suspend your driver's license. I was like, okay, well, I know this is not true. They're not going to suspend my driver's license. I've never even had a moving violation in Utah. But again, so what do you moving from training to building a security culture, how with these things happening on a daily basis? And these are just things, I mean, I'm sure my phone gets blown up with so much spam, texts. I don't even have time to, hit the button saying it's spam. I just erase it and then it comes again. So how are you, working with your training and building a security culture within not even the SOC team, within the whole organization of the Philadelphia?
Yeah, so I keep it a real basic level in the beginning. Something such as my motto is no such thing as a dumb question. These attackers, they like to, invoke emotion to trigger a response, and that's why a lot of the people fall victim. They see something urgent, like oh my gosh, my phone is going to get shut off, or the IRS is coming, and they want to pay without taking a step back and really thinking through, is this legitimate or not? Fortunately for us, we kind of live this life and we live this culture, so we know. But not everybody does that. Not everybody has the technology background and get the security awareness provided to them by their security, by their employer, or even take the initiative on their own, or have the I don't want to call it the common sense, but they just don't know that resources are available to them. So back to your question, I start with the no such thing as a dumb question. That's, come to me, think before you act. I'm happy to help you verify. I also like to let people know that, security awareness, especially training, it's not just a corporate responsibility. This is one of the things that's offered that can help you in your personal life. Oftentimes I see people, getting scam texts on their personal line. This training can help you keep your money where it belongs, in your pocket, rather than in somebody else's, account, and then having to go through the headaches of dealing with a bank and all of that. So I start from there, and then I build through with the, there are a handful of good products out there. That some of the great sponsors I've actually met, know before at one of your FutureCon events, they're my current platform. So, we build with, security awareness training, monthly mandatory, 100%. Everybody must do this, or it's an HR violation sort of thing. There are simulated phishing campaigns that we do a little bit more often, just to kind of see what's happening, to see what's baiting people in, and getting an idea of where our organizational strengths lie as well. Because, it's better to figure it out in advance than before it's too late. And, to follow up on that, because nothing's ever 100% foolproof, we treat, phishing clicks as learning lessons. It's not an aha or I got you moment. It's an opportunity to learn and improve and to figure out, what might have drawn you into that click or that, situation when it could have been otherwise disastrous.
So working for like Visit Philly, how big is your organization, and what do you think are the most challenging things that you have to be concerned of on the people side and the AI side and the phishing side, and some of the things we just
the AI side. So we are a smaller organization. We work with a lot of so I'd say my biggest challenge, we work with a lot of outside consultants and contractors as well, who as I treat as a day-to-day user. If they're going to access our system, they could be just as liable as somebody higher up on the chain, or a little bit further down the totem pole, just starting their career. If you're in, you need to abide by our rules, our policy, and utilize our methods of protection. So the phishing, I would say the phishing is the number one area where we are targeted. We're a small organization, but we're very visible. We're basically the marketing agency for the city of Philadelphia. So that puts us in position to be seen on TV and radio and magazines and other ads. And we also work with a lot of other organizations to where we can be seen as more of a gateway rather than maybe a direct target. So yeah, the phishing is definitely the big one. And, just staying on top of our internal tools as well. The end user awareness plays a major part of it, but it's also the day-to-day, making sure our systems are patched, making sure we have backups, just the never-ending roll and cycle of staying up to date of the many different things you need to do to protect yourself in the event of a major catastrophe.
So do you work with some of the other CISOs at the different municipalities of Philly, just making sure that you're all on the same, page?
I would say we share a lot of info, formally and informally. We hang out sometimes. We kind of, we all have our different roles in the whole ecosystem, I would say, but there are some similarities, between the city hall itself. One of our major stakeholders who we need to have overall success is the Philadelphia airport. And, I would say the museums and the attractions. Like, this needs to be a well-oiled machine overall for the city of Philadelphia as a whole to look attractive to the potential traveler, because let's face it, travel is a very competitive industry. Kim, like, say you wanted to go on vacation, you have options all around the world. Why would somebody choose Philadelphia over a New York or France or Chicago or San Diego or somewhere else? And I think that collective info sharing, helps keep the brand strong as a whole. And, again, we want people to come here, have a great time, and then go out and tell their friends and come back. And I think without that well-oiled machine, it's not possible.
Well, I think Philly is awesome, and your public transportation. Like, I usually take the train back to New York to visit my daughter, and I mean, the train station's nice, and I think Philly has so much to offer. I just never get to stay there long enough because I'm in and out of these cities. But let's talk about a little bit like the human firewall concept. Like, what's your take on that? And like, explain that a little bit, to our listeners. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, and that's like when I was getting into the security awareness aspect of security. I was always told that the human is the weakest link, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I would think, how do we make that into the strongest link? What if the humans weren't the, they're always going to be the target, but what if they can be an asset rather than a liability? And I feel that is where, it all comes in. So, again, back to our training methods, they don't have to be long, drawn out, all day affairs. Even a 3 to 5 minute session can be very impactful. back to, the awareness protecting personal assets. It's not just corporate, but it's everything. And, looking down the road too, I don't want to make this an AI commercial, but AI does change the game. And I think, deep fakes in particular, they are going to blur the lines of what's real and what's fake if you're not standing directly in front of somebody that you can touch and feel. So that, requires the continuous learning aspect of technology and security, because if you stay in the same spot where you were 12, 18 months, 24 months ago, you're going to get left behind, or you're going to get caught in a really bad situation. So to couple on that, especially me for being on the smaller side, I like to try to build security champions, people within the organization that can really rally behind the initiative. And it works. There's always people in maybe other segments that are very technically inclined and realize the importance, and getting, and that helps build the buy-in not only with the people but with the executive leadership too. I have often noticed that the higher you are on the corporate ladder, the more attempts people or actors will take on your credentials or on your resources. And again, it's just kind of staying current with the flow and the changes in the technology world.
And how would you suggest, what would be some of your recommendations for, if we really, if your goal, if your vision is the humans to be the firewall, which, that's got to be pretty perfect. What are some of, what would be some of your advice of how all of us could work together to make that happen?
A couple things come to mind. First and foremost, the person leading the initiative, they really do need to get executive buy-in, do whatever it takes to get it from the very top. That makes a program so much easier to roll out and to maintain and to grow when you have the CEO on your side and you have, different people in the heads of departments doubling down on the program holder's statement that this is important. So I think it starts there. I think every organization, no matter what size, should have some sort of security awareness platform in place, because let's face it, security awareness is an investment. It is not a cost center or just a box to check. And make a regularly required time frame where you roll out new tests, and also create a no blame culture, as I like to call it. Sometimes people make mistakes, right? The human firewall is a great term, but nobody on this earth is perfect. So when somebody makes a mistake, I would say build it to where they feel comfortable reporting it. So either it can be corrected or it can be mitigated before it becomes too late. Like, the worst thing that can happen is somebody with, access or, valuables gets duped into giving away their credentials, and something happening, and they're too afraid to mention something, and then the bad actors living inside of your environment doing Lord knows what, and it's like the snowball effect. It only gets worse and worse. And one other thing too, one key critical factor I think is the step 2 of security awareness is multi-factor authentication. I think the awareness and then enabling multi-factor authentication across all platforms can eliminate a majority of the threats that exist.
And I can't believe how many people don't do that, which is, baffling to me.
Yeah. I mean, I've had people over the years, not in my world, of course, but elsewhere, say, sometimes security gets in the way of innovation, or, this 2-factor, it takes too much time, or, it's a real inconvenience and a pain in the neck to enter a code or use an app or, do this or that. But then I like to say, it's a real inconvenience running to your banker and saying $100,000 is being wired somewhere else, or, your chief financial officer is being, deep faked, and, there are people being tricked into giving out things that really shouldn't. Those are the real headaches. This minor, I don't even want to call it an inconvenience, but a minor step in, keeping your security posture strong will go a long way into preventing what would be a real crisis if something bad were to happen.
So do you think we're like with how we have evolved and AI being here again? I mean, that's just AI is AI. I mean, it's growing bigger and faster. But do you think that it has like cybersecurity? It's no longer just the responsibility of the IT department. We have that on our website, and I've always said that. But how do you think it's becoming more aware for all the other non-security people that they have to be more, diligent on what they're doing? Or do you think they're still thinking, well, it won't happen to me?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right?
Hmm.
You hit the nail on the head. AI is, it may come through like the technology and security budget, but this, to me, I find AI to be a business-wide initiative, right? Like every department, every, group, every pod, whatever you may want to call it, could utilize AI in the proper context to find great efficiencies, to find cost savings, and to, 10 times the speed of work, with minimal resources. But with that said, the dangers exist. And I do think, the awareness, I guess the champion, the cheerleading, I should say, should originate from the IT and the security. But at the same time, I think people are becoming more aware of the dangers that exist. And as I touched on earlier, deep fakes, like that is the single biggest threat, I think, not only today, but what is it going to look 2 years from now? All you need is 3 seconds of somebody's voice or, a short clip of a person on YouTube. And bam, these bad actors have, they can have a whole conversation, looking like you, sounding like you, they can go on LinkedIn or any other, publicly available information site to know who's what and map out an organization. So to go back, yes, I think, the tech and security should lead the championship cause of it, but I think the end user or the person in other areas are becoming more aware of the dangers, especially through deep fakes. I think deep fakes have opened a lot of eyes, and at the same time, it's an area that's only going to grow and get worse from my seat. So we need to stay on top of how to detect that and how to make sure, how you can verify.
Well, it's interesting because again, it goes back to awareness. We, at FutureCon, you see our emails that we send out, and we're trying to confirm with people. And, you can click a button to say that you are going to attend or not attend. I did have a VP of IT call me. He's like, I don't really know if this is you guys because the tool that we're using happened. He goes, because the IP address is from France. And then after I talked to our IT person, we found out that the tool we're using is out of France, so, but it was out of 250 people, there was only one person that questioned that email. And it was a legit email, but it was still interesting to me that all these security people did click. They do click and confirm. But I mean, everything was safe. We made sure that everything was safe. But I again was, I was like, okay, well, we need to fix this. We can't have our IP address coming out of France because it's going to look fake to other people. But I love that he didn't do that. He called us to verify that that was us.
And sometimes that's all it takes is one person to raise a flag, whether they're a head of
Mhm.
IT or if they're a first day intern. And we're all in this together. So it doesn't matter who or where the information comes from. If it's legitimate, it could go a long way into preventing an issue or resolving a problem.
Do you find that it's hard to balance security with productivity and what you're like? I know, yeah, I see this all the time that people are trying to get big tasks done, but you're still stuck on all the things, making sure everything's patched and before you can go on to that big project, you need to make sure that you're safe. So where are you finding a balance of that?
It's definitely a balancing act. You definitely need to tap dance around, the speed of innovation with the need for security. And I think sometimes that's where the executive backing comes in, because there could be executives who want to move at a rocket ship pace, but it's always better for me to remind people that this short-term gain doesn't likely match the long-term ramifications. So, I take each situation as its own, model or as its own scenario and kind of evaluate, do I really need to put the clamps on it or can we loosen it up? Is the risk worth the reward sort of thing? So that would be my advice for anybody who is in a situation where they may be told or where it's insinuated that security is slowing down the speed of progress. I would say just take it case by case and be able to prove, where the ramifications, where that could exceed any potential benefit of the initiative that's going on.
Do you feel like for like modern culture that, that we're seeing, like when you're watching TV or you're streaming these networks, we see a lot of things that are AI stuff, and we're seeing movies that are about robots and stuff like that now. But I watched something the other day. I don't know. It was something about the dark web, but we don't see a lot of that on like through our culture. And I feel like that we should be seeing more. I don't understand why they're not talking more about like, all the dangers. Just so the public eye can be more aware, unless I'm missing something. How do you feel about that?
No, I agree with that. Or the old like misconception that a hacker's in a basement with like a hoodie on.
Right. Yeah.
Room, it could be Russia, it could be China, it could be somebody right down the street from you, like, in a suit and tie. Like, it doesn't really, one look is deceiving. And you're right. I think with the amount of losses, and I'm probably wrong on this, but I think I heard somewhere along the lines of $250 billion worth of assets were lost last year due to cybersecurity breaches. It doesn't make sense to me why there isn't a bigger spotlight on this. I will give a shout out to one show, like 60 Minutes is one of the very few places where I will see and hear about different breaches happening and, willing to go in depth behind who is doing it and the reasoning and, what was lost. But I do also understand the flip side of it too. A company that gets hit, there's a lot of reputational damage or perceived reputational damage. If a bank has losses, that may cause a lot of people to pull money out if that were to become public knowledge. So I see why people brush it under the rug. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's the ramifications, which can be major.
Well, and we could take what happened in Las Vegas a few years ago with I think it was MGM and whoever else. I mean, how did that, you working for the city of Philly, I wonder how the city people felt. I mean, that had to be alarming to them that, this could hurt tourism.
I mean, never let someone else's misfortune go to waste, right? So for us, like the city of Baltimore, a couple years ago, completely shut down. So it was eye-opening for us. Like, if it can happen, then what makes us exempt, right? And so you continue to, just put money into resources. You beef up your awareness. You do your penetration tests. You double down on patching. You check your supply chain or your third parties that you're working with. Like that's something, and it's even delving into fourth party risk nowadays. Like how do you prevent a partner that you're doing business with when they're, you're not running their systems, you're not making sure they're compliant, you don't even know if they have a policy per se. If they get hit and that trickles into your world, what can you do to stop that?
Yeah. So when we're, the topic today is from the weakest link to the strongest defense. So what would you think, define that a little bit for us, from the weakest link to the strongest defense, just through awareness?
I would say for every organization, any new person you have coming on, make security awareness a part of it from day one. Let them know as a part of the orientation, the full-on orientation, not technology, not security, but the employee onboarding. Security needs to be a part of that, I think, and take it from there. Make sure everybody's doing their part and make sure the organization, is behind it. Give updates as well. Be able to show progress, not only of the reduction in number of hits, but, give rewards. Let people feel good about the times that they may have reported something or stopped something. it's almost easier to count the number of things that people have prevented than it is the number of incidents that have happened. So I would say, yeah, make it part of the company culture, not make it a checkbox, just keep the people, make it fun, gamify it if you can, do anything you can to make it not just another thing to do at work. Double down on all of the good things, because the hackers, they aren't logging, they aren't just breaking in, they're logging in. And, the person can be a strongest asset and not viewed as the weakest link.
Yeah, that's I definitely, when we were doing like those bourbon events during COVID, and there was a lot, because you went to a few of those, and
Yeah.
we would sit around and talk to, there was like 10 CISOs, and it was interesting to hear some of their security training that they were doing, especially the ones that were making it fun, where people were, they were giving something away once a quarter, for people that would pass these phishing tests that they would do or whatever it would. So they brought the rest of the business sector into their security culture, trying to, show them, how important it is.
That's why events like FutureCon are so great. Like we all have jobs, we all have places to be and responsibilities in our day-to-day lives. But, FutureCon brings, all of the great minds from different aspects and different, industries as well. I find that to be important. I love talking to the CISOs from healthcare and the gaming industry and, manufacturing. It gets me outside of my hospitality industry bubble, where I may be seeing the same thing over and over and over again. The information sharing is great. I always find a good tool or two as well, when walking through the vendor booth and just hearing from the representatives who are dealing with multiple industries. I love just going from table hopping, I call it. I'm not there just for the swag. I'm there to hear about what people who deal with a variety of industries are talking about. So, that's a way to stay sharp, and just seeing other, CISOs, other industry hopefuls as well. It's another thing I love about FutureCon. You open the door to, the next generation as well. You do a great job of bringing in new voices on your stage, and, it's all notepad filling, and it's all just great content that we can all take back to our places of work to, fight the good fight, because, as we know, it's always an uphill battle in this industry.
Well, and I think I was telling you when we were talking before the show, how this year, I think this Philly event is maybe our 7th or 8th event we've done already. And our numbers are doubling with attendees, and we still run this in a hybrid mode. So, we probably are on average having about 200 to 250, vetted security practitioners coming on site, where it used to be maybe 125, and then people were still watching virtually. But I think the reason that everything's doubling is because with the nature of AI developing, growing so fast, people are just hungry for information. And I think they want to collaborate with their peers, because it's you guys have a rough, you guys have a tough job that you do every day, so I imagine, I walk by the tables because I'm in the session room all day, and between sessions, I hear people collaborating and talking, and the younger generation meeting people like you, and it's always great to leave our events when we see how happy people are, because they were able to get away from their office for the day and collaborate with other practitioners.
Yeah, this industry definitely isn't for the weak of heart.
Right.
Like I always had a love for technology, and I had a natural evolution into the security realm. It was kind of changing passwords and doing identity access management and all that before it was cool, right? So I love having an opportunity to pass that along to the next generation as well. Letting them know that it's not a 9 to 5. You're not going to punch in and punch out, every day. Sometimes it's going to hit you when you least expect it, and you just have to be ready. And be ready to roll with the punches and be a team player. So, FutureCon, again, that's a great opportunity for me to meet hopefuls, potential people to hire, people who could, hey, potentially hire me one day. You never know who you're going to meet. And that's the key.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. So what would be, before we, the last 10 minutes here, let's talk about some of the positive things that you've seen in the industry right now, that, and because I feel like we're always talking about, the bad stuff happening. What's some of the positive things that you're seeing?
I do think the community aspect of it is a positive thing. Ever since, again, COVID kind of went away and people were able to get out, I do see the real need and want for people to collaborate and pick the brains of others and information share. And, it's great for me in a leadership role. Like, I can have people, if I have a particular need, I can say, hey, I'm considering this vendor, have you ever worked with them in the past? And it gives an opportunity to give real world examples of how this was used, what worked, what didn't work. Might get some negotiating tips. I might get some, implementation tips, some things down the road. So I find that to be a good thing. I'm also noticing that security is beginning to get a seat at the table, something that we've always wanted to have. It's no longer looking like a back-end service. I think the hard work and the dedication that the men and women of this industry have put in over the years is finally being recognized. There's still a little bit of a ways to go, but I do see that glass ceiling being shattered a little bit. So I would say those are two of my favorite things right now. And just I would say on top of that, there always seems to be a cool new tool out there. I love to do evaluations and see where some of these new startups are going. And, it's just fascinating to me how fast these companies can come up with a product that can fit a real world need.
Yeah, it's I see it all the time, and it's and these young people. I mean, look at Cloudflare. I mean, they were developed. They were all 20. I think they were in their 20s. I don't know where they are now, but they're probably on a yacht somewhere.
Yeah.
But that just they just came, and Cloudflare is all over the place. And I don't know how long they've been in business, but I've just seen being what I do, just seeing these startups just.
One more thing comes to mind as well on top of that question. What I love most about, the security industry is, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you're from, if you have a real dedication and want to be in this industry, you have a fighting shot of making it, as to where others may require like a 4-year degree or something like that. I think this door is open for anybody who really wants it.
Yeah, I agree, but that is still a tough part of the industry, is how to break into, there's so many different facets of, being a cybersecurity practitioner, and there's still a lot of lost people that are new in the industry, and then there's still a high demand for jobs in the industry. So again, matching those two things up is tough.
Yeah. I can elaborate on that a little bit. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought this up, because getting your foot in the door is the hardest part. Nobody's just going to give you a job in this industry. The news will tell you cybersecurity is in major demand and there are 1 million open jobs, but you're right, there are a lot of good people out there still looking for work. If anybody out there is looking to get their foot in the door, and I want to give a little piece of advice, if you're having a hard time finding a straight up security type of job, you may need to just identify a company that you're interested in and take a different role and then grow into the technology platform. That's kind of how I got my start way back when. I finished school, my grades were great. I had a couple certifications under my belt, which today, one of the hiring, how can I say it? The hiring, just insanity requirements, people need 3 years of experience, CISSP, and some other crazy credentials just to get an entry-level job. And I think that's unfair. But back to my story, getting in, I had to take a job at a print company that I knew was ready to go under a digital transformation in the architectural industry. And I did something totally outside of tech for 6 months, but I put in some extra work. I learned the systems. I got to know the people, the general manager and the people who were in, hiring capacities. So, and then eventually I kind of grew into that role. was accepted once they were ready to make that happen. And then the rest is history. So that was a little bit of a long-winded spiel, but people, if you're having a hard time getting a full-time security job, maybe look at a different role within an organization that you're interested in, and then try to grow into that. Because you're right, it's very hard to just submit an application these days and get an interview and you're hired. The whole game has changed.
Well, and the practitioners, people like you, are so busy, that I don't know. I mean, I've been lucky with my team because I haven't hit, I have more luck with referrals than I have hiring people off of Indeed or anything like that. So it is really, so with that being said, it is really important that if you are trying to get in the industry, that you join some of these, chapters that are in the cities and start getting to know people, because I feel like that's your best bet of getting hired than blindly walking in a place. And these organizations, InfoGuard and, ISSA and OWASP. I mean, they're all, CSA. I mean, they're all the people that you would want to get to know if you're young and getting in the industry. And I've seen many people do it, and they're like thriving in their career. So
yeah, you're right, and that's a good thing to touch on. So, and I want to say thanks again. You gave me my first keynote opportunity a couple years back at FutureCon, and it was a great success. And one of the many things, one of my primary points, I would say, is network, because you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. And I get it. People in the security and technology side, they're not always the most outgoing of people, the most outgoing of people and personalities. So one piece of advice I give is, just if you're not ready to strike up a long conversation with somebody, because your initial network can be 30 seconds to a minute, see somebody, ask them, hey, did anything particular bring you here today? Just have a short dialogue, shake a hand, connect on LinkedIn, and then, follow up, and then look for the groups and continue to build your network brick by brick, person by person. And before long, I think you could have a good, valuable resource of people to pull from when you're trying to do something or trying to get somewhere in your career.
Well, there's so much more we could have kept talking about, but I think we covered a lot today. And is there anything that you would want to leave for our listeners today? Anything that they can maybe do different today that will help them stay safer tomorrow?
I'm just going to double down on two things. No such thing as a dumb question, right? And have an open door for people who may not be as technical as you, so they feel like they have a safe space to report something that may have happened. And second, again, security awareness is an investment. It is not a cost center. So reinforce, double down, show some metrics on where the security awareness has become an asset for your organization, and, put some numbers behind where these teachings could have stopped an attack that could have had a really bad ramification.
Well, thank you so much, Keith. Keith McMenamin. Did I say that right?
McMenamin, but it's close.
McMenamin, I know, and you've told me a million times, but Keith McMenamin, VP of IT at Visit Philadelphia. Thank you for being on the show today. I'm excited to see you in Philadelphia on Thursday. So again, thanks for being here. We'll have to have you back again so we can dive deeper into some of this. I told you 45 minutes would go fast. So thank you for being here, Keith.
Yeah,
and
for your time. Very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Keith. And thank you, everyone else. Have a great St. Patrick's Day, and stay safe, stay secure. If you're in the Philly area, you can check out our event online, because I don't know if we can fit any more into the event, but we always have a virtual option. And thanks, everyone. And for anyone going out to RSA next week, our team will be out there, and we have our bourbon event. So if you're interested in that, just DM me on LinkedIn and we can give you some information about that. So everyone, stay safe, stay secure, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.